The webinar today is focused on servitization, and we have a very special guest here with us today. Marc Salvany is the founder of GrowthBeam, and we'll introduce him in more detail just very shortly. But before we get going, Marc, I just wanted to set some context here for the audience. And the term servitization seems to be very in vogue in the hardware space. And just given your background that you've helped several companies execute on this servitization journey, I think what would be helpful for the audience is just to set a definition for what exactly servitization is, in your opinion.
Yeah. Thanks, Anant. I think that for me, and we had a lot of companies think about as a service, and we will see later different definitions of as a service or servitization. Actually, I'm reading a book from some friends of mine on the in the advanced services group, and one of the first chapters talks about servitization, or the definition of servitization. And what I really liked about them is that they combine product together with service. They talk about the product service system, also talk about the customer, and also talk about a job to be done, which is also a definition from another book that I really like. So they don't focus that much on the end result of what servitization or as a service may mean, but how you go into there. So you need to force yourself to think about having a product, creating or combining it with a service, to then try to fulfill a need or a job for a specific segment of customers. So I think that even though it seems broad, but if you can combine those ingredients within what you're trying to do as a company, you will get your servitization journey right.
Amazing. And that's actually what I'm incredibly excited about in this conversation in particular, because from all the discussions that we had, I think this will be a very good combination of strategy combined with the tactical, right? So it's not just simply, a framework to think about servitization, but actually tangible steps that you can be taking in terms of starting to think about this journey. And so, Marc, to introduce you to the audience, Marc is, like I said, the founder of GrowthBeam. And prior to this, he was instrumental in launching the projects and services division at Signify, which is obviously the lighting as a service portion that spun out of Philips. And before I forget, Marc, in addition to doing everything that he's done in this space, is also the founder of a 2 Michelin star restaurant in Barcelona.
Yes.
But Marc, I'll let you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing at GrowthBeam with companies in lighting, building controls, and the industrial space. And how exactly did you get here?
Yes, thanks. I think that a lot of people will just contact me just to get them a table in my restaurant. So I don't know if that will work, but just briefly, 25 years helping companies grow and transform in the energy efficiency, renewable energy, manufacturing, and services sectors, mostly around creating new business development, digitalization, and services. And as you mentioned, 12 years in Signify, helping them transition from a top conventional lighting manufacturer to the undisputed leader in connected lighting and lighting services. And I think that's one of the reasons I created GrowthBeam, because I saw a lot of companies right now struggling into trying to how they would think about tackling the as a service or their new servitization journey as the industrial revolution was knocking out at their door. So that's the reason I founded GrowthBeam, and I really hope with my past experience in different sectors and different industries to help other companies do the same that, for instance, I did in Signify.
Fantastic. And just a little bit about myself before we get going. So my name is Anant. I work on the business development team here at Xyte. And for those of you who are not familiar with Xyte, we actually make a purpose-built platform for manufacturers that are looking to transition to this new as a service or servitization based economy. And what this means is that our platform incorporates IoT based asset management, customer support, and commerce capabilities that let manufacturers get to any sort of outcome that they want on this spectrum. So that could mean launching new managed services, selling service contracts, selling spare parts and warranties, providing software licenses, like I said, or even getting to full-fledged subscriptions or charging based on the output of your machines and your equipment. And with that being said, the agenda for today here is we are going to talk all things servitization. So most importantly, why now? Why is this term being heard about so much? Why is it in vogue? And then really the rest of the webinar will cover how can you as a manufacturer start thinking about your own servitization journey? What is the framework that helps you get there? And then lastly, how do you evaluate, depending on the type of business that you're in, what type of servitization program makes sense for you? And then what is the right type of technology that would let you execute on it? And then lastly, we'll cover, leave some time for Q&A. So Marc, you shared this with us before.
Yeah.
And immediately, what struck out at me here is we see this massive divergence in companies that are in the manufacturing space and are selling subscription-based products versus companies that are not doing so. So could you just tell us a little bit around what exactly this subscription economy and index is? And
yes,
then why and why are manufacturers so interested in it, and why is the market responding to it?
Yes. So first of all, and the subscription economy index is just it's a term that was coined by Zuora, and specifically said it measures the growth in the volume of business for subscription-based products and services. First of all, we can see a lot of growth because most of the contribution would be, I would say, linked to SaaS and software as a service. However, you have a lot of manufacturers now going into the subscription business. And why? Everyone talks about the market consideration. They talk about consumers, how more or less following the wave of software as a service, how customers want to be flexible, and how, for instance, the access of capital could be restricted. But I think that from the manufacturer's point of view, which is something that we do not talk that often, I think that there's a key consideration. The technology innovation, the innovation cycles are so fast right now that the consumers cannot keep up. And if you think, for instance, in a B2B environment or even a B2C, the pace of innovation is too fast, then the consumers cannot absorb the type of innovation that is going their way, which means that, for instance, the independent service providers cannot really manage that amount of information. As a result, manufacturers are pushed into the model because as a manufacturer, you're innovating. You want your customers to purchase your products. However, those are increasingly complex, and those are and probably you will be upgrading them in 6, 12, 18 months. As a result, manufacturers are pushed into this model in order to have at least their products sold again.
Sorry, and that's a very interesting point because, I think that's something that often goes missing from people's thought process, is that as an end customer, if I'm buying a piece of technology, I'm sinking money into something that's going to be outdated very soon, and the rest of the market would have moved on.
Absolutely.
And so as a manufacturer, I guess that opens up an opportunity for you that you can keep upgrading your customers to the latest and greatest. But then, even for your customers, there's a very real threat to their business in terms of getting saddled with something that's outdated. And so, what they also want is actually the best possible equipment, the best possible device that they can have access to.
Yes, absolutely. And also, the customer will want a peace of mind because as obsolescence rushes and it's very fast, you don't want to be stuck with something that you can probably are not able to maintain. So that's something that also you need to consider.
Right. Very interesting. And this is actually something that we see as well when we are explaining the opportunity behind Xyte to investors, to prospective customers, is that increasingly buyers of hardware are interested in buying outcomes. The hardware is a means to an end, it's not an end on its own. And like you said, whether that might simply be the peace of mind that, okay, I've bought this equipment and the manufacturer is guaranteeing me its service. The service is baked into my purchase of the product. Or it could also be all the way on the other side of that spectrum that I was describing at the beginning, that the manufacturer is so confident of their product that they are comfortable telling me to only pay for it once that product is actually producing something for them. So obviously we have like the likes of Trumpf that have launched the paper part model in the industrial space, which is very popular. And then I guess in personal computing and anything in the IT space, really, as a service has been going on for a few years.
That's a very good
And
point. It's
yeah,
a very good point because there's no way you're going to advance with servitization or an as a service business model if your product is crappy. We have to say like this because it's actually having and sometimes manufacturers disregard that point, but you really need to build awesome products in order to have the initial leap of faith from your customer to just entering into an as a service contract. So I think it's very important, and we will see over the presentation, having the right product, having a solid foundation around a product is absolutely key to deliver an as a service proposition.
right. Absolutely. And really, Mark, the starting point behind all of this, right? Because obviously, people first think of it as a financial transformation, that I'm fundamentally switching my business model from, not getting paid upfront to getting paid over many increments, or that I'm getting paid less upfront and then I'm making up the money in the quality of service that I provide over time. So how exactly, like where do companies even begin? Like when they think about, not just the shift in what they're selling, but then how exactly are they charging for
Yes.
it?
Yeah, I mean, companies trying to go into this journey, they will first of all, I mean, as a service, you will have different definitions of as a service depending on the industry, depending on the company. You may have different companies within the same industry doing different types of as a service, but even at a commercial channel level, or even at a product level. So these terms will coexist. And because these terms coexist, whenever a company is thinking about which one to adopt, unfortunately, what they do is they want to try to pick one at the very beginning. And I think that in my view, in my experience, that probably is one of the last things you need to focus on, because again, you need to start thinking about your customer needs, your products, and your service system or combination. Therefore, you will have the best combination of business model together with pricing models. And on top of that, you may have a company that, because it has different products, it serves different industries, or it serves different segments. You may, as a company, have different business models for as a service with different pricing models depending on the segment and industry that you're serving.
Right. So not everything is right for everyone, which is why there are different flavors of as a service.
Yes.
And you have to understand which one is right for you.
Yes. And the
Depending on
problem
the type of
sometimes,
product. Exactly.
yes.
And I guess just expanding on this point a little bit, Mark. So in our conversation earlier, we talked about the factors that influence your choice of as a service, right? So you've already told us a little bit around like finding out your right product and services mix, and how exactly are these different factors at play, and how should manufacturers be thinking about evaluating the range of factors that they should consider before they really pick the path that's most suited to them?
Yes, I think that the first instance, I've divided these factors in three, I would say three tiers, being the first tier, business strategy, revenue model, product and services. And that first tier focus about what do you really want to achieve in terms of, do you want to have a recurring revenue? Do you want even to prevent a market share erosion? You may have different reasons as a company to just go for as a service or as a service proposition. But then after you really decide what you really want, you really need to define with what. And with what is what I was mentioning about, okay, first you need to create or to compound your product and services mix. Once that, and that would be more or less the direction together with the content of what you want to do. But now on the second tier, we would be tackling about how you want to do that. How do you want to tackle that on an operational perspective, from an operational perspective? How do you want to do that from the technology perspective? And how do you want to do it with your customer relation? How do you want to change the way you talk or you communicate or you receive information from your customer? And lastly, I think that we talk about market trends and customer dynamics, and most importantly, once you have adopted the certain type of technology, data will give you hints about the customer behavior, how customers use and experience your products, so you can actually go back and iterate in, again, the first and second tiers of your servitization journey.
And I like that tiered approach because oftentimes, like in conversations that I've personally had, I think people are too fixated in the exploratory phase, even of how does this all come together financially. But they miss the bigger picture of, okay, once financially I've figured it out, how do I put it in place? So you could have a challenge around how do you re-incentivize your sales team, right? Or that, okay, you've introduced a model that depends on you owning the asset uptime as the manufacturer. Now you think you might have the tools in place to recognize an incident, but how is that actually tied towards the resolution of an incident, right? And then what does that digital infrastructure look like in order to make it all possible? So I like this approach of, starting with the business strategy, product, services, but then thinking about the operational and the technological challenges.
Yes. And you will see later on the 5 pillars of servitization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this really brings us to the meat and bones of everything in this webinar today. So, Marc, the 5 pillars, I guess what immediately jumped out at me here was it's maybe it's just catchy that you have 5 pillars, right? But how do you understand what's foundational to a company? So in your experience of guiding different companies through these servitization journeys, how did you arrive at these 5 in particular?
Yeah, I mean, this framework was more or less originated through my entire experience on that I have accumulated on services, field services, renewable energy, and also, for instance, on the lighting industry, when we were developing the Light as a Service, but mostly on a, I would say, on a corporate, on a company level. Why? Because what I've realized it is that whenever these 5 pillars kind of are easy to explain, are easy to communicate on a corporate level, and also it's very easy to get the company around them. For instance, I mean, we talk about culture. I mean, culture within a company, it's probably is the first things that we talk about. And whenever you want to introduce a change of this magnitude, everyone is always considering culture, and it's easy to put your company to work about a culture change or a culture improvement. The same way in which we talk about value proposition. Value proposition, we are more or less always talking to product-centric companies. So how easy is to talk about a value proposition to all your product development, product management, product marketing teams? It's quite easy to say, guys, we need to really change our value proposition or adapt our value proposition if we want to achieve these objectives. Same happens with operational excellence. There are teams, there are departments, there are divisions within a company in which you can guide them to talk about, okay, what this new business model means for this new operational excellence. At the same time, when we talk about enablers, well, I mean, that's now that you have defined more or less the culture objective, the value proposition roadmap that you have, and how you're going to do things, it's very easy to say, okay, how, as a group, as a company, are we going to enable this? You already have your endpoint, and now you need, just as a company, you need to start thinking about what are the things that will help you enable. And lastly, and this is something that we'll talk about later, because I mean, sometimes they start the house by the roof. But lastly, once you have everything there, in the event you want to scale, because sometimes maybe you want to have services as a service, servitization just for a specific product or segment. But in the event you want to really scale, then you need to think about integrated solution. Everything needs to be seamlessly linked, so you can have your customer can have a great customer experience.
Right. And so it's really first getting the organization behind the idea of as a service, which really at its core is a fundamentally different relationship that you now have with your customers, where it's not a sell it and forget it. It's really a sell it, but then service it, ensure the best possible experience. That really is part of what you're getting paid for now. So therefore, how you behave changes, and then taking that all the way down to the granular level of execution and actually understanding how will this be systematized and deployed out into the market. And so on that note, obviously the first thing that you really put here is culture, right? Starting at that idea stage. And why is this so important to define upfront?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, culture is the first one, because it's the one that I personally got the most resistance from. It was quite frustrating seeing the amount of resistance that I could find in the organizations that I work for or I worked in. But most importantly is companies are always or sometimes afraid that they need to radically change. They have to do a 180 degrees change. And that's not always the case. But because they have this preconception, there you have your resistance. For me, the most important part is prepare the organization into embracing change, embracing innovation, and most importantly, change your mindset about having a customer service-centric business environment. And then you may have, and we will see later, you may have different, you may still develop great products, but in another setting.
And we have Rolls-Royce here as an example. So in many ways, like they were the pioneers in the technology space when they introduced power by the hour. And is the culture here really all right? Prepare for change in terms of how you charge customers for it, but really what you do best is you have a mindset and clearly the outcomes to really point towards engineering excellence. And
Yes, for
now
me.
you have that culture and you can say, all right, our engineering excellence means that we are so confident that we'll only charge you for the uptime of the asset here.
Yes, for me, it's probably one of the personally is one of the perfect examples, because Rolls-Royce has kept to do what they do best, which is great engines, but they have changed their whole mindset. They have created an environment in which is completely customer service centric environment. On top of that, they're using IoT, they're using data analytics, not only to improve operations, but also to just create and have more touch points with the customer. So that's probably, to the best of my knowledge, and personally, that's the best example that I could find in culture.
Right. And then the second one here was considering the right product and service combination. And here you've highlighted a company that you're intimately familiar with, in Signify. And the other thing that you highlighted, when we were in conversation earlier, is that not everything is fit for as a service. So not only should you find what your right combination is, but be brave enough to discard and have an honest conversation at a company level that this is not something that's actually meant for as a service, and maybe the traditional way to do things is best. So how exactly do you think about this point here?
Yes, actually, this is what usually happens at the very beginning with a company wanting to go to as a service. They assume that everything has to be sold as a service, and then is when you have maybe half a year or a year of just trial and error, trying to fit different products in a certain as a service business model that doesn't work. And I think that, again, rethinking your value proposition in a product service combination, it's probably the best. I give the example of Signify because I was witness of this transformation in which we moved from conventional lighting to connected lighting, but and the entire lighting industry, but the way Signify, Felix Lighting at the time, had to rethink about how to reposition their products, how to reposition LED, how to combine it with controls, how to go with IoT, how to go with data. It's a very good example on how Signify over the years has been pushed into consider the right product service combination for instance, for as a service business models. And you could see in their portfolio that not all the products currently are fit for an as a service proposition.
So what might be an example of something that wasn't fit for as a service?
Well, you have different products, different industries, of course. The usual suspects, a high value product with a very long lifetime that has a very high component of service, because its usage or its functioning is very critical. That
is fit for as a service.
That would be fit for as a service. Right. However, there are exceptions, and you need to consider the in which context or in which industry this product is placed. And let me explain a little bit. For products that are destined to become, for instance, energy efficiency. HVAC, lighting, and then, for instance, cogeneration, things like this. You will have a different flavor of a service compared to, for instance, those products, those machines that are in a productive type of environment in which productivity, efficiency, even yield is important. And on top of that, also, in parallel, you can have products that are important for as a service just because people are using it. And therefore, you will have other types of offerings or propositions within the umbrella of as a service.
Right. And that actually answers one of the questions that we had from the audience, which is like, what is suited to as a service? So two birds, one stone there.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one here, Marc, is focus on the customer, right? And I guess this sounds very simplistic that, we everybody talks about building a customer-centric organization. But in many ways, like, I guess when you're in the business of reinventing how you do business, it's also a good time to revisit what type of market you're in, what type of problem you're solving for a customer, and whether you are doing the best possible with your product in order to achieve that goal.
Yes, absolutely. And when you were mentioning is this one for me, it's one of the most difficult and yet the most rewarding if you do it right, of course, because you were saying, okay, how to revisit your processes around your customer. Well, most of the companies unfortunately don't think about their customer yet, and they start thinking and streamlining organizational and processes just thinking about themselves.
Yes.
Therefore, that's a problem because they incur into huge effort, huge expenses, and the result, unfortunately, is very, very disparate from what the customer may want. And as an example, what I was mentioning before to you with Michelin, and not only because I have 2 Michelin stars in the restaurant, but
nice plug.
Yes, nice plug. Yes. And I think the most important thing is that Michelin has wheels, has tires, and there's nothing simpler than that. With all my respect to Michelin, but they have created an industry around in which they not only manage tires, but they manage mobility. And that can only be done if they revisit their processes around their customers. And this is something that they have done very successfully. And also, as Rolls-Royce, they're also using IoT and data to just get closer to the customer and improve their operations. Another example, when we're talking about potential as a service environment in which you produce yield and improve efficiency and productivity.
And I like that distinction between, like the tire is the tool, but mobility is the job to be done, to your point from the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really the essence of servitization, is thinking about what problem you have to solve. And then how does your product aid in the solving of that problem? And that really should be the guiding principle for everything.
Yes.
And lastly, ensure that you deliver value, right? Which is, I guess, like the main point behind all of this is developing the best possible products. And, the more that you can maximize the type of value that you're creating, the range of problems that you're solving for your customers. So not just the initial sale of the product, the subsequent peace of mind, and hopefully all of that, has an alignment of incentives around how you solve problems and how you make money. And that really gets us to this discussion around value. And why do you have this as a seminal point in your 5 pillars?
Yeah. I think in this one, the enablers is probably the bigger bucket of all of them, but it's providing you have you're working towards your right culture, you have the value proposition, and you have crafted the operational excellence that the enablers answer to this specific question: what can help you reach your goals? And whether that is a technology or whether that's a company, a system, or channel. So whatever you have set as a goal, with whatever value proposition you have, with whatever processes, now you need to think about what can help me enable that success. And maybe that's changing your sales incentives. Maybe that's exploring other commercial channels, even service delivery channels, or even partners. How are you going to frame this legally, or even what's the technology adoption that you need to do if you, for instance, want to go connected?
Right. So what are all the adjacencies you can cover? That, okay, like my product as it is right now addresses this much, but what else could I be doing in order to maximize the amount of value that I provide?
Yes.
And I think finally, really, and in some ways, like your previous point touched on this, is building for scale, and how your technology, your systems, your processes in these adjacencies, like how does this all come together in making sure that whatever servitization journey you embark upon is ultimately successful? And also, when should companies start thinking about this?
Yes. You could more or less, I mean, you could sell as a service with a pencil and paper to some extent. Once it's fulfilling your goal, once you think that it's scalable, in order to gain efficiencies is when you need to start thinking about, okay, what is the type of tooling or what is the infrastructure that I need in order to fulfill that need in the best efficient way, or in the most productive way. Unfortunately, most of the companies start thinking about the tools the first way, with a false hope that the tool will help them achieve whatever they have set as a goal. And sometimes they are, and we have discussed this about before, they're thinking about, okay, we may want to we may want to develop this ourselves. And then is when you find companies that have invested years and large amounts of money trying to create new software as a service, or even platforms as yours, that are trying to just get everything in place. As a result, because they're still running into getting that business model, unfortunately, they do not have enough scale to justify the level of investment that they're doing. Therefore, most of the times they're getting into problems, and some of the times they're getting those programs get killed.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because what we've seen here at Xyte is that servitization really brings a very unique technology problem associated with it, where like IoT's been around since really 2004. Asset management tools have existed since then, but how does your asset management actually link back to your customer support systems? And then further, how does that link back to your purchasing journey? So a very simple example of that might be, how does a customer renew their service contract with you? Or how do they buy a license to upgrade their machines? And then when you start thinking about all the possibilities and the actual execution that you have to perform in order to make your servitization program real, you realize that there's a lot of software to be built. And like you said, like that's not necessarily always within the core competency or the desirability for a manufacturer, because it very simply might not be the thing that is their unique differentiator, but it's something that nonetheless they require in order to effectively go to market with their servitization program. And so what we've done at Xyte is we've broken this up into really three main buckets, is how we think about it, is that any servitization journey needs IoT-based asset management, but then that has to link back to your customer support. So, the old way of doing things where you fill a contact us form on the website, or, you call somebody at the company in order to have your problem solved. That's really not how things work now. And lastly, you need a way to get your products and services in front of your customers. What's easy to buy gets bought. And crucially, we do all of this in association with your channel partners, because that's obviously a reality of how business gets done. Sometimes you can go direct to your customers, but more often than not, it's about giving your channel partners the tools in order to really win the market alongside them. And with that, Marc, we get into questions. So we have 4 here.
Perfect.
One of them that we've answered. But this one, I get this a lot from prospective customers that I speak with, is ultimately, how long does it take to get going with servitization, right? And I would divide get going into 2 parts, right? One is the assessment of it, like how can I even try this out and understand if it makes sense for me? And then the second portion is how long does it take for my organization to ultimately full-fledged transition to servitization?
I mean, of course, everything varies on industry and company, but from my experience, what I've experienced in the companies that I've worked for, and I would put a differentiation. If you want to do this in-house, you could expect that more or less it will take you approximately 5 years. 5 years, provided that you have enough patience and enough funds to just create not only the team, but create all the other adjacencies that we've talked about. And it's easily, and 2 years of those 5s will be just devoted to creating the team, getting the team on board, and getting the team acquainted with the organization. Now, if you want to outsource this to a potential as a service consultant, that could take you between, I would say, 12 to 18 months. Why? And there's a caveat with that. First of all, I mean, the time of discovery will be very short. You will get into a proposal in which you will get laid all the information and all the guide on what are the things that you need to do with the types of partners, platforms such as yours that the customer could be using. And then it's very, and potentially you would, as a consultant, would probably land a quick win. So the proof of concept will be already there. Therefore, for a company, leapfrogging those 5 years, it could be probably with 2 years, and then you could have enough information to start working on the as a service proposition. This time, probably you would have to develop it in-house.
Right. And so it's like really, I guess because as a manufacturer, you do know your business, but then at the end of the day, it's still a new journey that you're on, right? So there are so many unknowns that you might as well learn from somebody's specialized experience in this domain, right? Whether that's on the advice side or whether that's on the technology side, and go that direction, obviously with your unique input. But
Yes.
It makes more sense to partner as opposed to be developing this in-house and making all those mistakes for the first time.
Yes, and also you need to think about one thing. Last thing, if you're the CEO of a company and you want to do this in-house, you are, first of all, you need to communicate to the entire organization your willingness to go as a service, and you're creating a team that is going to go head to head with the entire organization. Therefore, as a CEO, you will have to back this team every single time they get into an argument. So that's very time consuming for a CEO. The moment you probably outsource this, you get your first wins, the company sees, then it's way easier than to start creating your own in-house as a service team.
Right. And showing proof is always more powerful than showing theory.
Yes.
And I guess related to this, Mark, is when companies are on this journey, like they obviously conduct a pilot in order to understand how exactly does this all work, right? And that's usually first at a small scale with a specific product line. Obviously, it's there is a structure in terms of going about it that way. Keep things small and manageable at the beginning. But what is your advice to a company uh, in terms of how they should think about structuring their pilots, and also
Yes.
importantly, how long should that initial experiment last for in order to see results from it? Like, can this be done in 3 months, 6 months? What is that time frame?
Yes. So, I mean, first of all, on the time frame, it depends, right, on the industry, on the product, depending. But most importantly, so the right way, in my view, would be go into startup mode. Within your company, you really need to go into having a venture-like, startup-like organization that can actually help you develop and have this freedom to actually do this. But this has a caveat. This startup needs to be business model based instead of product or R&D based. What I've seen so far in some of the companies that I've worked for is that innovation is most of the time driven by R&D teams, innovation teams, and just because they're used to a little bit, and depending on the difference, but they want to push products, they take longer. They really take longer than if you were doing business model based startup.
Right. And actually, I come from a background in venture and startups, and that was one of the biggest lessons there is proving the business out first, right? And so, of course, you hear of these examples. Actually, there's a company in India called Zepto that's in the 10-minute delivery space. And their MVP, where they proved the business out, was a WhatsApp group in their neighborhood where they would take an order from someone and then like go out and deliver it. And then they would see what type of repeatability they had. So if I'm able to deliver on this experience of getting products to you within 10 minutes, will you continuously become my customer or will you go shop elsewhere? And then once they saw the repeatability hit a level of comfort that gave them the confidence to go ahead with the business, they did it. And I think it's always useful to think about parallels like that to go into startup mode, like you said, even within larger companies.
That's a very good point, because if you were to translate that example into a corporate setting, that would be considered sloppy at least, and therefore they wouldn't have any type of credibility. Yet it's a very good proof of concept.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like only invest in the technology once you're confident that there is a business to be had. Yeah, and then lastly, Mark, probably the most important question that we've
Okay.
received in this Q&A is, what is the name of your restaurant?
Yeah. Okay, I'll say it. It's the well, by the way, I exited a few years ago, but I still have relationship with the
Yeah.
chef. The restaurant is in it's the translation, it's called Five Senses. It's called
Okay.
Cinc Sentits.
Okay.
It's the Catalan translation for Five Senses. So www.cincsentits.com.
Okay. There you go. All right. And complete coincidence, I will be in Barcelona next week, Mark. So maybe we
Just
get to
ping
have
me.
dinner there.
You know my
Yes.
email, so I can get you a table. Let's see.
Yes. And if you want a table, this is where you get in touch with Mark, or your company is looking to go down the servitization path, whatever it might be, gastronomically speaking, or business-wise. This is where you can get in touch with Marc. This is where you can get in touch with me if you want to learn more about Xyte. Add us on LinkedIn, visit our website, send us an email, whatever you want. And a recording of this webinar will be available later on as well. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Marc.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.